Today we're going to be doing some technical analysis for the SPY, Qs, Apple, Tesla, Amazon, and NVIDIA. We're going to get into that, but first I wanted to start with the VIX. I normally save the VIX for the end of my video, and I highly suggest you start paying attention to the VIX at the end of the video. Looking at what is being said by, multiple people about the stock that you are watching is very good, but if you can actually help yourself a lot by paying attention to what's happening in the VIX, okay? So the VIX today, we get a green bar, right? We got this almost gap up, right? We gapped up, and then it looks like we may have even closed this gap. We're seeing a green bar. And what have we been talking about over the last couple of days is these Bollinger Bands. And you can see how today these Bollinger Bands just got a little bit tighter. And that means that a explosive move is about to happen in the VIX. And that's the main reason that I wanted to put it at the very beginning. And what can we see about the VIX that is maybe hinting what could happen? And right now you do have a green bar. You have a green bar on the MACD. So you did get that little bit of a cross down there. You have an RSI that's above 50. You are above the 50 and the 200 with a green bar here. And we're not up by 10%, which means we don't have that 85% chance for a down day. So when you are coiling up like this, you can see an explosive move. Now, I did draw that to the upside, but that easily could also be an explosive move to the downside. We don't necessarily know, but I just wanted to show you kind of how this reacts when we do get tight. And overall, we can just look back just a little bit and you see how we were tight in this little bit of a range in here for quite some time. We get tight, but even this little part right here, we got tight, and then we bursted a little bit up and we came back. So we could see some kind of wicking out by the end of the week, but right now we're just paying attention to the VIX because an explosive move is coming. Now, yesterday I said, we don't necessarily know which direction we could go. And even though we do have this red bar and we look like we did break out of this little bit of structure that was formed here, we still don't necessarily know for sure, but it is starting to pile up that the probabilities are that we are going to head to a little bit lower levels to go find some buyers. Now, where could that be? I actually drew this little new trend line just in case we do get some kind of higher low scenario playing out like we were talking about. And maybe tomorrow we are able to see some dramatic selling and come into this point. And this is where I see that lower high or higher low actually, playing out in front of us. It's right around our weekly expected move, right? Now, if we do cut below that, we could see more dramatic selling into next week, and then maybe we do get that divergence scenario to play out. So those are the two bearish scenarios I would like you to pay attention to. And we overall for tomorrow, it's going to be a wild, wild day. Volatility is starting to creep up even higher, and we have Jerome Powell talking at noon, okay? So we really want to pay attention to what he says about rates and whether or not he hints or even suggests that they are going to pause in the next 2 months. Yesterday on the SPY, we were talking about this head and shoulders, right? Left, we got the head, we got the right shoulder. The only thing is we actually had a bearish scenario, which was these highs up here. The market does like to do this a lot, okay? Market makers like to come up above all these highs to take out all your stops and then make some kind of downward move. And it looks like that is the case that is playing out in front of us. Now, it doesn't mean that right now we have to, head to lower levels right away. We easily could, okay? But right now we do see that we could see some sort of, bounce higher, maybe to test some moving averages, or we could even get some kind of bounce higher to get a retest of these levels right up in here. Now on the Qs, it kind of goes the same for the SPY. If we do start to approach that weekly expected move to the bottom side of it, look for reactions from that move, from that point, even if we cut below it, look for reactions from that zone, but we are heading into the end of the week. And the other flip side to this weekly move is if we do see dramatic selling and we get way outside this with no recovery, we can actually drop very, very quickly. That is when crash scenarios actually play out. And we could see a touch of that 200 in the near future. But for right now, we do have this wedge here, okay? So we have this wedge. We could easily come down and get some kind of touchdown here, giving us some kind of divergence, maybe even into next week. But right now, if we did want to go with the, higher low scenario, what I did was I just wanted to pull up a little fib retracement here and tell you how good this lines up, okay? If we do see some dramatic selling tomorrow and then Jerome Powell comes out and he actually does tell us that they are possibly going to pause in the next few months, you can see where my golden pocket, which is this right in here, this is the golden pocket, and that's where I would expect some kind of reaction for possibly a higher low scenario. So if we do see a dramatic sell into this type of level, we could get our higher low scenario from there. If we do see that dramatic selling down into these areas, we can actually see some tech stocks start to bounce with that earnings coming up. So we do have a lot of tech stocks that are reporting earnings, I think in the beginning of November or maybe the very end of October, that could give us some good numbers, some good data to show some growth, and then we could see that bull run into the end of the year. I am overall paying attention to this wedging here, okay? And we are wedging, which means that we actually could see, a measured move here actually play out to the upside if we are able to break out of this wedge eventually. Now on Apple today, it looks like we tried to get all the way up to that 50-day moving average, and then we actually did start to sell off. So we couldn't necessarily retake the 20. So we rejected off the 20, we rejected towards the 50, and now we're seeing us start to sell down. So I do have a little bit of an algorithmic, selling here, which if this does continue down, we could see it possibly touch somewhere around 172. Overall, what I'm thinking happens in Apple is we could see a test of the bottom of our purple zone here. Down here, we weren't able to really break below it ever, right? We couldn't close below it. So it would be a genuinely good area for this stock to test if it does want to move higher from there. I believe that's where the higher low scenario would play out. And if we do get the lower low scenario, I am expecting some kind of cut of the 200, and then possibly we actually head down into the bottom of our little wedge that's forming here, and we get a triple divergence. And if this triple divergence does play out and we get some good earnings and things like that, because Apple reports earnings in the beginning of November, we actually could see a huge bullish move in Apple in the future. Now, Tesla yesterday, we were just talking about how we pretty much got some indecision, okay? We were in the same place as the day before, right? We're trying to hold above that 50. We're trying to hold above that 50, and now we're getting some kind of sell-off. Now, they do report their earnings, and we can see if that actually happens before I end this video, and I'll touch on it again if that does happen. Right now, we're paying attention to the bottom of our big triangle. If the bottom of our big triangle breaks, or the top, right? But if the bottom, since we're heading that direction, does actually break, we could see some very dramatic selling, and we will go probably directly towards that 200-day moving average very quickly. I just want to remind you that a lot of stocks are seeing these Bollinger Bands, right? Yesterday it got tight, now we're going a little bit down, but these are still very tight, and we could see an explosive move. And I think you see that a little bit in Tesla, because Tesla's one that we were talking about had one of the closest Bollinger Bands. So these Bollinger Bands here will end up getting tested to the downside or the upside in the next few days or weeks, most likely. I highly doubt that we, extend and stay in this very long. I actually think by the end of October, we will start to see a break of the downside or the upside. The bullish case, let's say we do see more dramatic selling, possibly with that earnings, but then we do see some type of hint in a pause coming with Jerome Powell. Okay, that actually could see a good reaction, but right now you have a very bearish day. So really pay attention to the reaction of this and pay attention to what Jerome Powell says. Okay, even if Tesla does report bad earnings and we see this dip down into this level, if by noon we haven't necessarily broken these levels, or if we do break it, we can actually buy back into this big triangle with that good news. And for Tesla, I just wanted to zoom out. If we do get some kind of pause, you're going to see how kind of coiled up we really are with Tesla right now. And we could see this actually explode to the upside. And where I'm expecting it to test, what you want to pay attention to is all these highs, right? We want to pay attention to this high here. We want to pay attention to this high here, this high here. And we kind of just take that as it goes. Once we take a new high, we're going to pay attention to the next one. Amazon has probably one of the tightest of these Bollinger Bands, so I'm expecting a very dramatic move in Amazon, right? We're going to most likely get out of these Bollinger Bands probably for a couple of days to the upside or the downside. And right now, today, you are actually, doing what I said we needed to do, which is come below that indecision bar. So we came below that indecision bar. Let me move this over. Then we actually could see a full-fledged big move down into the bottom of this wedge that seems to be forming, and then maybe we can look forward to some kind of divergence on a daily chart. The thing is with divergences, I like to say this a lot, but I'm going to remind you one more time, even if there is a divergence and there's no good news, that could just be one more pop to drop you again to the downside. You need good news behind those divergences to get a solid bottoming. But one thing to note on Amazon, we actually do have that earnings on the 26th of that's next Thursday. Okay. So if Amazon is able to report some numbers and we are down in these areas and we do have that daily divergence, not necessarily say confirmed, but let's say that it is set up at that point, we actually could see Amazon making some kind of big move if they do report good earnings. And the fact that if we do get some kind of pausing hinted towards the future from the Fed. Now, NVIDIA, we overall were talking about how this is a bearish, day. It is technically, I mean, I guess you'd consider it indecision, right? This candle here could be considered indecision, but I overall was tackling how it is a very bearish candle because we are now below all these moving averages. Okay, so we were expecting NVIDIA to head to lower levels, and I think I kept it pretty short and sweet yesterday. Yesterday, I was just like, I expect, NVIDIA to come down and test the neckline. Okay, so we will test that neckline. Now, whether we do get some kind of bouncing and then we go test it, I still believe eventually we will test this neckline. And the thing that I'm overall paying attention to is how we react from that level, because a lot of people will be buying shorts at this level if this starts to break, right? So if this does, even tomorrow, right, we're expecting an explosive move. If tomorrow this actually does break, and then by noon, maybe we get some news of a possible pause coming in the next couple of months, we actually could see NVIDIA bought back up throughout the day and stay above this level, taking out all of the stops at the prior low here. And then we could see maybe some kind of move in NVIDIA going forward. Pay attention to, if we do see more dramatic selling, is a touch of that 200, and that 200 sits as of right now around that 341 price target. Okay, now the thing about that 200 is it sits right in the middle of this gap, so that means there's not a lot holding you up. If we see very dramatic selling, this would probably be that crash scenario. You will see a very dramatic drop, right? Because there's nothing in here, there's no buyers in there to hold you up at that point. Thank you so much for subscribing, and thank you if you were subscribed and you got yesterday's info on yields. Overall, I was just talking about how stocks needed to sell off yesterday. This is a very rapid move we got yesterday, almost 3% in one day, and we saw almost a flat day pretty much in SPY, which and even the Qs. The Qs are only down, I think, 0.33% yesterday. Really, when yields move quickly to the upside, you're expecting some kind of reaction. Now, today we did have that auction for the bonds, and usually at the auction, at least how it's gone the last few times, is we do see yields climb higher during these auctions, and that's probably because they want to make a better price for those bonds in order to get people to buy them. So that's necessarily why that happens. You notice that we are closing above these highs. That is a very bearish signal. That's overall we've said. If we start to go above these highs, then we will start to see dramatic selling, and that's exactly what we are seeing today. What we can pay attention to for these yields to come down is, if you notice, we actually crossed down here on the MACD, right? We crossed down here on the MACD. Maybe we do get a couple more days of green bars to come up into this 5% level, and then we can see some sort of divergence that might hint that these yields actually are going to come down. And that is overall why I'm leaning towards a pause, right? A lot of the time when you're reading these yields, you can say, okay, the market is trying to guess right now which way the Fed is leaning, right? Are they going to raise rates or are they going to lower rates? And when you see this kind of thing happen before that news is released, that just means that the market is banking on the fact that they're, well, not really necessarily banking on, but they're thinking that they are going to raise rates. And a lot of the time, this is a very good thing to be a contrarian on. A lot of the time we get this stuff wrong as traders, right? If you do see this start to skyrocket upward and then the Fed comes out, they actually announce that they're going to pause or something like that. So we still want him to say those words. We still want them to implement it. So don't think that that's in the cards just because there is some kind of divergence. But if he does say that, just know that you are most likely going to see this divergence start to play out, and then we're going to see these yields drop off. All right, and I think we kept TLT pretty, short and sweet yesterday as well. And I overall at this point, I was just like, it really looks like we want to go test somewhere around 82.50. So if we do see those yields start to head just a little bit higher, we could see a touch around 82.50 before we start to see some reaction to the upside. Overall, with yields and TLT, we really want to pay attention to whether or not the Fed is going to pause. Okay, if the Fed says that they are going to pause and these yields say, even come below this level, we can look for that daily divergence start to set up for us, and I am a TLT investor, so we could see some sort of rapid move in TLT because a pause is going to signal for those yields to come down pretty dramatically. The overall takeaway from this video is I really want you to pay attention to how the VIX is moving tomorrow, okay? And then the next thing we want to pay attention to is what Jerome Powell says at noon. If he says something like a pause and we still see selling after that, that could mean that after this option's expiration, we are actually going to see quite an explosive move to the upside. But the VIX is very contracted right now, so we really want to pay attention to the language he uses. As far as the market goes, we did see, yesterday I was more in an indecision, but today we did see that selling. So I do believe we do have some direction for the next day or so, but we really want to pay attention to everything that is, going to come out data-wise, earnings-wise, and especially what the Fed says tomorrow. Thank you guys so much for making it to the end of the video. I really, really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe, do all that stuff that you guys are so good at doing. And I hope you guys have all the luck in the world trading tomorrow, okay? Peace.